This video is a little bit different from what I usually do. I could separately make a video talking about these issues in a more global, broadly applicable manner that would make sense for any political context where vegans are thinking about taking the vegan message and adapting it to go to the polls, to actually participate in electoral politics, to try to get people elected. But I struggled with kind of take one, take two, take three of trying to do that. And I thought, you know what? Let's stop and let's actually make a video just talking about vegan politics here in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. So this is one case study. And I want to say also, this has come up when people criticize me for being a critic. They say, how do you criticize? This is very, very different from offering film criticism after a movie is already in theaters, when your criticism can't possibly change the movie. The reality is I'm offering this criticism at a time when the elections we're talking about are very much ongoing. They're at step one. They're just at the beginning. When the criticism we're having could really raise productive questions and could stimulate people to come to new answers and adopt new strategies and to learn more from the experience of what's going on here politically as it happens. So this is not criticism. I mean, if you criticize a film, nobody's going to go back and re-edit the film in response to that criticism. It can't really have those kinds of positive outcomes, right? And there are positive things about what we can learn and who we can work with and what can come out of this. Victoria is not a big city, but it is the capital city of this province. So politics is a big industry here. It employs a lot of people who are employed by the government. And the scene for vegan activism is very small, and I think I can safely say it is largely closed. So I've come here, and some people here do recognize me as a kind of YouTube celebrity within veganism. I don't know if I mentioned this to you, babe, but like one person, I was actually posting about buying secondhand equipment for the kitchen. Yeah. We just furnished this apartment. And someone I remember replied to that post by saying, oh, YouTube royalty. They just commented this. So there are some people, they're vegans, they watch stuff on YouTube, they know me this way. Yeah. But in terms of who are the local leaders and activists here in Victoria, they are not happy to see me. None of them are interested in coming on my channel and doing an interview, promoting their work on my channel. None of them are inviting me to come to a protest. And on the contrary, when I volunteered to go to and participate in a vegan protest, we don't have to specify what kind of protest, I was kicked out of the Facebook group. So, and I've asked Jordan himself, the guy this video was really about, what happened? Why was I kicked out of this Facebook group? Why was I not, and these same groups are constantly preaching openness and cooperation. I have videos I could link to right now on YouTube where Jordan and his girlfriend Corey are preaching the importance of cooperation, collaboration, and so on. And it's like, well, none of you can cooperate with me. When I get off the airplane, I get back from 2 years in China, and I'm really just here to cooperate with people and do something positive. Yeah. So it's a small town. The amount of talent here is finite. And, I wonder, look, I said this earlier in the bodybuilder video. When I sit down in that room, it's a bunch of people planning for a municipal election, planning for participating in electoral politics. I don't think anyone is happy to hear me say, because this is how I introduce myself, my degree is in political science from the University of Toronto. Mm-hmm. I have experience working in a municipal political campaign, planning and running a campaign. I learned a lot from that experience. It only happened once in my life. It was a very small campaign. Really, there were only 2 people involved. It was a Green Party campaign to get someone elected in Toronto as alderman or city councillor, however you want to term it, as the local government, representative. But I was really involved in that campaign. I learned so much. It was a pivotal turning point in my life and how I think about politics in so many ways. And this is really what I'm into. I'd really like to positively contribute. So as positive that message is, I think the reception in the room was pretty icy. I think nobody wants to hear that. Politics, it's the ultimate topic on which everybody wants to feel like they're an expert, and nobody wants to recognize that there are specialized areas of expertise. That there might be something you learn by getting a degree in political science, by formally studying this and what have you. People want to... It's because politics, it overlaps so much with a sense of identity and morality and everything else. Mm-hmm. I think nobody's happy with that. And what I said, just to finish this, because you already know I said this, you were there. What I said to the bodybuilder was, by contrast, I know that same room of people would have responded so positively if I just said, hey, I'm a student in baking college. I'm going to study and become a vegan baker. I'm going to bake bread and cakes for you guys. Isn't that great? You would have gotten so much warmth and positive interest.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I do remember one woman saying that basically do what you have to do to get elected. And
yes.
Once you're elected, then you can focus on animal rights issues when you're in an elected position.
Right.
So that was a positive response, I think, influenced by what you said.
You're right. No, I mean, what I said in the meeting, and a couple other people, there was a man sitting on the left too who reacted, who was taking on board what I said. In terms of the phrasing here, I'm partly going to respond to just the nomenclature you're using. It is different when we talk about animal rights and we talk about veganism. One of the things, I said this in the meeting very briefly, but you and I discussed it afterwards too. It's an interesting point. The way they were talking about veganism was as if this campaign to be elected would be implicitly and inescapably about the fact that this guy is vegan. That people would either vote for him or vote against him because he's vegan. Like, period. Right? And one of the things I said in the election was, I said in the meeting about the election,
right.
I said that is just as misguided as me running for office here and thinking people are going to vote for me or vote against me because I'm a Jew. That's part of your background. That's part of the little blurb on your bio. The biography. Oh, he happens to be involved in veganism and animal rights. That is. But the vast majority of people will just regard that as if it were part of your ethnicity. That's how it is to outsiders about veganism, and understandably so. Yeah. The current leader of the NDP, so the NDP is our Democrat Party in Canada, the most left wing of the mainstream party. He is, I think in the past was vegetarian and says he's going to become vegan. And, he has a long beard and wears a turban. And, in terms of who judged him or who votes for him, who votes against him, it speaks well of Canada. I don't think his ethnicity really matters that much. Sure, maybe it matters 5% or 10%. It may matter a little bit. Yeah. I mean, okay, there are exceptions. I think, Barack Obama, does his ethnicity matter? In a certain momentous circumstances in history, it matters. But most of the time, people are going to commit to vote for you or not vote for you because of the promises you make in the spirit of public service. Now, it may sound like let's bring it down to earth. What do I mean? Again, I said this at the meeting. In the last city elections we had here in Victoria, I was here during them, pretty much every candidate was known as the guy who was for the bridge or the guy who was against the bridge. We also have a controversy here about sewage treatment. The guy who was in favor of this plan for sewage treatment, the guy who was against it. There are just a few issues like that where the public knows your commitment to the issue, and you have maybe one sentence in the public imagination where you can tell people, this is what I'm about, this is what I'm going to do for you. Does it matter whether or not you're Jewish, whether or not your diet is kosher, whether or not your background is Jain or Hindu or Sikh, you're from India? None of that matters nearly so much as what you're saying in that one sentence. Hey, this is my commitment. Hey, I'm going to make sure we do build the bridge. Or I'm going to make sure we don't build the bridge. I'm going to make sure the sewage treatment. This kind of thing. And, that may sound low and mean-spirited. It's not. If you're elected to government as a city councilor, you are a civil servant. You're serving the public interest, and you've got to tell them what you're going to do in that civil service. You've got to commit to that. And there are only going to be a few things like that you commit to. And then for 99.9% of the public, the fact that you're vegan matters as little as the fact that you may be Hindu or Buddhist or Jewish. Mm-hmm. Again, unless you're living in an intensely racist society where it really matters, where the anti-Semitism is such a big deal, that you're actually campaigning on your Judaism as an issue, I doubt it. So that was a very strange thing in terms of self-perception. I'm sorry, but in terms of the way you just phrased it in this comment, you were talking about animal rights. Sorry, so do you have more to say under that heading? I mean, look, you're not being elected to a position of government that has anything to do with animal rights. And this guy, this candidate, Jordan Reichert, he does have a background in campaigning for animal rights. He also has a background in drug rehab and treatment for drug addicts, homeless people, trying to get people into better jobs, better housing situations, mm-hmm. and what have you. Yeah. I'm sorry, I thought there was a third plank, something else I was going to mention in terms of his background. No? Okay.
Well, you
right.
had given the advice of maybe making one of the campaign promises deal with
Right.
the rent.
Right. So that came
wasn't
up.
part of his background.
And
It
that
was just a
wasn't
suggestion.
right. That wasn't something I think I raised. I think other people in the room were also talking about that. Right. So there's also the possibility he could build his campaign on the rent being too high in Victoria. Right.
Yeah.
So these are kind of ideas that were in the room. But you can choose to campaign on the promise that you're going to solve the drug problem here in Victoria. That's a problem that matters to everybody. And that's a problem that is in your jurisdiction if you're elected to this position. You say, look, if I'm elected, this is my position on the drug epidemic in this city. This is how I'm going to solve it. Or this is my position on homelessness, and here's what I'm going to do about it. You can have specific policies that you commit to. But when I asked him about that, and again, I spoke very briefly at this meeting, his response was to retreat to, no, he doesn't support any position on those issues. He just represents compassion. A compassionate approach to these issues. And this is, I've talked about it in a few YouTube videos, this is one of those problems in politics of people perceiving weakness as strength, where people think the vaguer I make this message, the stronger it is. And that's the exact opposite of the truth. Claiming that you represent compassion is really weak compared to coming forward and saying, this is my position on building the bridge, this is my position on sewage treatment, this is my specific promise to you, the public, the voter, this is why you should vote for me.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting that in this meeting, it was the very first meeting for his campaign.
Yeah.
And he said, I don't want to talk about specific policy issues right
yes,
now.
You're right.
Which I think at this point can be understandable, but also, he should be thinking about it.
Well, I really disagree. So this comes back to this image of there's a criticism of the Rolling Stones. Do you record an album so that you can go out on tour? Or do you go out on tour to record your album, right? You're right. He said he didn't want to make any statement about any specific policies he endorses. So why are you running for government?
Yeah.
Why is it you're coming to this meeting and you're saying you're going to have focus groups and ask the public what your position should be? Now, there are some situations in politics where some of that, can go on. Mm-hmm. But the fundamental concept of leadership in politics is exactly that you come into this race with a commitment to achieve something. So I think the clearest example of this being really successful for someone who's really a political outsider, really didn't have money behind him or public support, Jesse the Body Ventura, the wrestler. Jesse Ventura, okay, you don't know about this? He was a wrestler. He was a professional wrestler. And he had a list of about 4 or 5 things he wanted to accomplish if elected. They were really specific, legal reforms. And then he said he would accomplish those things, and then that was it. He would retire. There was nothing else he was going to accomplish. He wasn't a career politician. And he, to my knowledge, he did. He lived up to that. He passed the new laws, exactly what he promised. Then that's the point. You don't have to trust this person in some more vague, broad way to say, oh, if I'm elected, this, and this is what I'm going to accomplish. And that's it. That's what you're voting for. Yeah. You're voting for these issues that matter to you. But as opposed to coming in and saying, hey, I represent compassion, something very vague, something any political party can claim to represent.
Yeah. If
you vote for me, you're going to get a compassionate approach to these issues. Okay, so what are you actually going to do about homelessness? What are you actually going to do about drug addicts? What are you actually going to do about the bridge or sewage treatment or whatever the issue is? This tells me nothing. It's not a promise I can hold you to.
Yeah.
It's not a commitment to doing something positive for the public.
And it's also something I don't think you can define yourself. I don't think it's as strong to define yourself as being anti. I think he mentioned he doesn't like the idea of throwing drug addicts in prison.
Right.
So being anti that and
what
not
do
offering, a different perspective on it, a different option is weak.
Yeah. Yeah, people are going to vote for solutions, not for problems, plus the word compassion. Look, something I really learned from experience. I mean, I guess I knew this in theory before, but I didn't. The experience of the political campaign I was a part of in Toronto, I really learned how crucial it is to find an issue that you alone represent, for it to be concrete, specific wedge issue, and then make sure that your competition can't take it away from you. You say, hey, I'm the one candidate who has this position on this issue. I'm the one candidate who will deliver this outcome for you, the public. If you vote for the other guy, they won't. And it's got to be something specific. I started off being involved with politics in the Green Party. But what I learned the hard way, and again, maybe I knew this in theory, but I guess I didn't really think it through till I was actually involved in an electoral campaign. If you say we represent ecology, the Liberal Party can say that they also represent ecology.
Yeah.
If you say we represent less air pollution, the Conservative Party can say they represent less air pollution. Mm-hmm. But when you say we will stop this power plant from being constructed, now it's different. The Conservative Party will commit to a vague concept of improving air quality. The Liberal Party will commit to a vague concept of ecology. But on this power plant that all the other parties are in bed with, they're already committed to it being constructed, we're the guys, we'll stop it. We'll cancel this project. Of course, multi-billion-dollar project. Any power plant is a huge budget project, right?
Yeah.
But you can't campaign on compassion. You can't campaign on equality. It's the other good example. Compassion, equality, ecology. None of these things. They're all just vague maxims that almost any political party or political candidate can claim to represent.
Yeah, I was just wanting to say he didn't actually say, with regards to veganism, what actual policies he would be against. Like,
right.
He did mention horse-drawn carriages, which I know in the past has been one of his. I don't know if you would say, like, one thing that he's trying to stop in the city.
It's one of the issues that got him into the newspapers. He's had newspaper coverage over his protests against horse-drawn carriages.
Right. Sure. Okay, so horse-drawn carriages and also deer calling. But he didn't say, like, I'm going to run on this platform of being anti-deer calling or anti-horse-drawn carriages. And I think he has to realize that most people will not vote on that basis because it doesn't affect their lives. Well, so like rent or like, that's why he realizes he could focus on his strength of having a past in drug rehabilitation.
Are you campaigning to win? His answer is yes. He's actually trying to get elected.
Yeah.
That was talked about. Or are you campaigning to be a platform for veganism or for some other message? I would be totally happy to run in an election where I know I can't win. I say, look, I'm running in this election to ask tough questions about ecology, veganism, health policy, you name it. I could have some PCRM style stuff about, why are we encouraging...
Stop feeding dairy to our kids in school.
Right. Hey, why do we have dairy and eggs being fed to people in hospitals?
Yeah.
I mean, you can ask this.
So recovering.
So it's illegal to smoke cigarettes in hospitals, but we feed them fried eggs. What's that about? Mm-hmm. So I could make a list of things where I say, look, I'm running to raise these issues. These are the issues I want to draw attention to. I don't think I can win, but I think there's another kind of moral victory we can have. That's not his approach, interestingly.
Yeah.
But if you're playing to win, and the card you're playing is, I'm the guy who's against deer culling, or I'm the guy who's against horse-drawn carriages, we know exactly what the outcome's going to be. That's what you did in the last election, which was 2017. It's not ancient history. This is 2018. In 2017, you got 102 votes. So, I mean, maybe this time it'll be 110. But, running on those issues that even vegans don't support you about.
Yeah.
Because we're above 2% of the population here is vegan, here in Victoria. But you're not even getting that.
Yeah, because it's a different election. He thinks because
right.
you have the option of voting for a total of 8 people, that someone will be willing to use one of their 8 votes on him if they see compassion, if they see this term. But... yeah, so that's why... He's
probably right. He's probably going to get some votes that way. I mean, I don't know.
So, yeah, I think even going with the same strategy he did last time, he probably will get more votes than the last one because you only had 1 vote.
Sure.
I'm not as familiar with Canadian politics
That
as
is
you
true.
Are,
There is a difference that in the prior election where he got only 102 votes, each person voting only had 1 vote, and this time they have multiple votes that they can apportion on the ballot in a little bit more of a dynamic way.
Right.
So that is true. It may also be that he gets more votes because he has lousier competition. In the last election, he, running for the Animal Alliance Party of Canada, he got fewer votes than the Libertarian Party, which is a tiny party. So, I mean, that's how marginal you are right now. You're less successful than... You could learn from what the Libertarians are doing and double your number of votes. I mean, you're at this level, right? And for me, I mean, something like horse-drawn carriages, that's marginal and dubious even within veganism. I mean, whereas something like saying, hey, if I'm elected, I'm going to challenge the school boards. Why are you teaching our children to drink milk when we know it's not healthy? I think that's a strong suit for veganism. That's something that might interest people who are not vegan. But, my advice, if you are actually playing to win, if you're actually trying to get elected, what I said to him was, you have to pick a wedge issue and make it your own, a distinctive issue that matters to the public. That's only your issue that other people aren't standing on. Yeah. And see, this is the other thing. So I'm just skipping ahead a bit, but he said in response to this advice, which I'm not fully fleshing out here, he said, well, it didn't matter because everyone knew him as the animal rights guy, so he was just going to run as the animal rights guy anyway, because that's how everybody knew him, right? Now, I didn't say this, but it was like at the time I was thinking, right, everybody is 102 people. Okay, 102 people voted for you last time. It's just not the case that you have a mass following on the basis of animal rights. But what I did, so I didn't say that to him. What I did say then my next piece of advice to him was, look, you're thinking about this the wrong way. In this election, I said a lot of people in this room mentioned the drug addiction issue and your background as someone who counsels drug addicts, who deals with that. Yeah. A lot of people in this room right now were excited about the possibility of you making the drug crisis your wedge issue, your go-to issue. I said, if you become the anti-drug guy, whatever you want to say, if that's who you come, then for this election, from the perspective of the electorate, that's who you are. If you decide to make your wedge issue the low rent issue, if you say the rent is too damn high, you're going to make a campaign over promising to have lower rent for people, then for the electorate voting for you for this election, that's who you are. That's what you represent. That's what you're promising to do. And the fact that you happen to be vegan or happen to have a background in animal rights, this is almost as irrelevant as whether or not your background is being Jewish or what have you, or German. I think he is German. But, whatever your background may be, that is not what people are voting for. That's not who you are for the public in this election. That's not what you're committing to do. That's not what you're campaigning on. And, I think the whole language of what I was explaining to them was really very foreign to them. I think their way of thinking about politics is, on a deep level, not on a shallow level, is identity politics. That all they want to do is say, hey, I'm a good person. This is who I am. I am compassionate. Vote for compassion. Vote for me. And there's really no sympathy with the position of the voter. That the voter has probably a list of complaints about things in Victoria they think are terrible. Like, in most cities, it's something like they want the roads to be repaired. We actually don't have that problem here. The roads are fine. But it's something like that they're going to the polls that they're animated by, and they want to hear from you your commitments on exactly those issues. And there are only going to be 1, 2, or 3 of them. Building the bridge, building the sewage treatment, or it could be, what are you doing about the homeless and the drug addicts? What are you doing about the rent being too high? Whatever it is. I don't know. Identity politics. Maybe that's why people like your Facebook page. Maybe, the sense of you being a good person, of, running on that in social media. Maybe that does take you, kind of so far and no further. But it seems to me a fundamental misunderstanding of the role of leadership. That you are running as a political leader, not as someone who asks the public what your position ought to be, but as someone who's, someone who's telling them, I'm committed to achieving this goal. If you vote for me, that's the goal I'm going to achieve. And a fundamental lack of understanding about the civil servant attitude, that you are, as a public servant, saying this is what I'm going to do in your service if you give me your vote.
Yeah.
You got more in your mind? You seem like you want to say something.
I think most people have a negative opinion of politicians in general.
Yeah.
So trying to say that I'm a good person, I'm a compassionate person, I also don't think that's really going to work.
It's extra hollow, right?
Yeah.
Donald Trump ran on saying he's not a rapist. And, Hillary Clinton ran on saying that Bill Clinton was not a rapist. And, you look at the allegations about sexual impropriety on both sides, and it's pretty dark all over. Yeah. But, I really feel that's a perception of weakness as strength, as soon as you're wanting to talk about specific policies, of just trying to retreat behind compassion, or even ecology, or what have you. Saying, no, if you don't commit now, if you don't commit before you go to the ballot box, how can we expect to hold you to account? How can we expect to be accountable after you've been elected, after you've got a budget and a salary to carry these things out in the name of the public interest? Yeah,
and I guess another thing that I would want to talk about, we have, you and I agree on this, but I think there is a splinter within veganism of people who are animal lovers, and people who are not animal lovers, but, obviously we care about animals and care about the well-being of animals. But, you know, how is that going to be perceived by the public when you say, you know, I know it was a joke, but his girlfriend said it's a dream of mine to have this funny ad for the campaign. Like, Jordan would be walking around a park and be, like, interacting with animals like deer and cats and, like, dogs and...
Right.
You know, appealing...
Because he's the candidate who represents the animals, right?
Yeah, right. And, you know, we had watched one of his videos where he was at some gathering of people, and he told them to vote for the animals. Like, you know, one vote for me is one vote for the animals.
That's right.
So if you're going to, you know, if you have pets, like somebody...
Right, if you love your dog, you should vote for him. It's totally
bizarre. Give your dog a vote for me.
That's the hardest part I find. That's what I find hardest to describe to outsiders about the scenario. I talked to someone else about this morning over Skype, and he said, oh, so the guy's campaigning on a vegan platform. And I had to say, no, not really. Yeah. It's not a vegan platform. It's a for the animals. It's a love the animals platform. And if you do that, so he already has a track record, you can get 102 votes. Yeah. But it's a totally surreal political platform to run on. Yeah. As like it's much more coherent to run on, just to give an example, an anti-war platform. You can be a vegan person who supports animal rights and says, hey, I'm mad as hell about the war. I want Canada to leave the war. Make a big moral thing out of that. You can be the anti-war person. Yeah. And people at least know what they're voting for, you know? This thing about crafting his political message, about like the idea that animals love him and he loves animals, it's weird. And you can watch the videos yourself on YouTube. They have very, very few views compared to even my own modest, you know, number of viewers on the internet. You know, I think it's safe to say you look at those videos, nobody wants to hear it. Yeah. During the lecture, so this was an event entirely attended by his supporters. I mean, you know, naturally, the nature of the event. I think there was one guy who was there because his mom brought him, who wasn't really a supporter. There are a couple people like that. But basically, everyone is there because they support him. And I've got to say, for most of this event, the majority of people were bored. I can't say to you everyone was bored, but there were a lot of long periods where, you know, you're sitting in the room, you're looking around the table. This was boring to people. And his lectures that I have sat through, I forced myself to sit on YouTube and listen to his lectures, where he's sitting at a podium at an all-candidates event. That means it's a debate, basically, where each of the candidates makes a statement. They don't really directly debate each other so much. But, you know, you have contrasting lectures from each of the candidates before an election. And I'm so biased in this guy's favor, right? I'm also vegan. I also care about ecology. There are a lot of common values there. And I find this boring. Right. I find it totally boring and totally banal.
It's not just that you're vegan. You have a vegan YouTube channel.
Yes,
you care about veganism.
Like, well, and I care about politics. I care about politics in Canada and so on. All this stuff. I'm passionate about, you know, all these issues. But it's like you can't even reach me. Yeah. You're alienating me and you're boring me with your approach to this issue. That really can be symptomatic of a broader line cause. So look, I brought my girlfriend to this event. I've known Jordan, not personally, but you know, to some extent I've known him personally. Actually, we've talked about some personal stuff for more than 3 years. I didn't know. I mean, going to this event, I didn't know what his platform would be. I did assume there'd be more of a spirit of him learning the lessons of the failure of his last campaign and taking on a new direction, or being open to taking on a new direction in this campaign. And it was really the opposite. Yeah. It sounded like he was 100% committed to repeating exactly the errors of his 2017
And this time
campaign.
He'll get more votes because of these
right.
different. Yeah.
But, and he probably will get more votes. He'll probably get more than 102 votes, but I don't think he'll win. Yeah. And if I'm wrong, I mean, I'll be happy, I guess. You know, I'll be one more vegan in a position of power in Canada, I guess. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But let me ask you, you have no commitment to politics in Victoria. You know,
I can't vote here.
But having been to this meeting and having here made his statement, do you want to vote for Jordan Reichert?
Well, I think, as you said, having a vegan in politics, I think I would be inclined to vote for him. Yeah. He seems like a put-together, presentable candidate. You know, like, just generally, you know, like, he seems like a professional guy. Like, he can be professional. So, I think I probably would. Like, in this context of having 8 votes for council people. Yeah. I would probably get one of my votes. But it depends on, you know, other issues that the other candidates present, if I feel more passionately about something that they promise. If there is a candidate that's saying, I'm going to lower the rent, and if they're really committed to it, the rent is too damn high. If I had to choose between one, I would choose that rather than deer calling or a platform of getting rid of horse-drawn carriages. To me, it's pretty obvious what is more important to me.
For me, there were a lot of red flags, in this already. And, look, I guess I can say I sympathize with anyone who wants to take on the challenge of taking the vegan message and adapting it to have impact at the polls. In that sense, I'm a fan of what he's doing or what, in theory, he's trying to do. But in terms of what his actual platform is and what his message is, there were a lot of red flags.
Yeah.
And I know from things he said previously, but also from things that were said in this meeting. I mean, there was talking about violent protests, about burning down vivisectionist laboratories. You remember there was the discussion about anti-vivisectionism and stuff.
That's true.
And apart from what he actually believes or what he actually said, what you saw with that part of the discussion was that on the level of rhetoric or debate or discussion, he's not capable of dealing with that well, right?
Yeah.
So that's a red flag for me. Mm-hmm. No matter whether it's sincere or insincere or whatever, it's like, well, as a vegan in politics, that's the kind of issue you've got to be able to deal with.
Yeah.
And I've had I rarely answer insincerely. I mean, you see, I'm overly honest in most situations, but I have been in political situations where somebody asked me about something like this, like, well, would you abolish this or would you make this or that illegal? And one of the answers I give is, we're in the middle of like a 300-year struggle. Like some of these issues, like, look, I can give you my opinion, but it doesn't matter. Like fundamentally, normally it's something like declawing cats or something. Would I make it illegal to declaw cats? We just had a law passed for that in Eastern Canada, Nova Scotia or New Brunswick, one of those. They just made it illegal to declaw cats. But I mean, part of my answer really is, look, we're facing this crisis to do with factory farming and mass production of meat and what have you. We have a lot to tackle here. But, if you want my specific position on declawing of cats, we're in the middle of a 300-year struggle. It's going to be centuries before a lot of this stuff gets resolved. Yeah. So this is not really something you can give answers that aren't evasive or aren't dishonest, but say, look, let's see this in perspective. Let's see this in this context.
Yeah. Yeah, but I will just say, I can tell that I'm biased in this way to say that I would vote for him just because he is vegan.
Sure.
When I last voted in local elections, I really did look into every candidate, and some of them didn't have a website, some of them didn't have any kind of presence. So I really just voted for the ones that actually seemed to be putting forth an effort, like the ones that actually had a website. And
the ones who had a platform at all, not necessarily a good platform.
Yeah,
right.
So, I think if it were the last elections that I've been voting in and he was an option, and, we'll see how his campaign goes, but if he actually, comes up with some platform that I agree with in some ways, then I would vote for him.
When you're in a political debate and one side is trading in generalities, in platitudes, and the other side is using, we normally say, is using facts that have a face. I hate to say that's political jargon. It's whatever it is, what it is. So if one person is talking about a platitude like compassion, and the other person says, vote for me, there will be 0 homeless people in that park downtown within 4 years. That has a face. You will be able to play with your kids in that park without drug addicts and homeless people being in that park. That's my commitment. That's what I'm going to achieve.
Yeah.
Guess who gets the applause and who gets the vote. Because one side is using facts that have a face and one side is not. Now, another issue here, I've taken you to the beaches here and I've told you there's really no swimming because of water pollution in the beaches. What if, ecology is vague. Both sides can represent ecology. One says, I represent ecology, and the other side says, human beings should be able to swim. You and your children should be able to put on your swimming trunks and swim at Cadborough Bay or at this beach or that beach. Yeah. You name a specific beach. You say, last year, 167 days of the year, the water was too polluted to swim in. I'm committing to that. Those are facts that have a face. And you see, you got to put the face on it. You got to say there's a person in their swimming trunks going to the beach. You flesh it out. You make it a bit human. So that's an aspect of politicking. Yeah. Thanks for talking this through with me, babe.
Yeah.
I say again what I said at the beginning of this video. This is not like offering a criticism of a film that's already been edited and brought to a theater near you. These are very much, this is a political campaign it's step one in many ways. It's possible this video will have a positive influence or raise positive questions about the future of that campaign. It's possible it will result in me being kicked out of another Facebook and ostracized from another vegan group, and that Jordan will never talk to me again. And I say also, it's really, really hard giving advice that nobody wants to hear.
Yeah.
And this is why ultimately for me, after now years of experience in vegan activism, and before that experience with ecological activism, First Nations activism, Southeast Asian politics, various spheres, I mean, now my conclusion is that to have a basis for activism, to have a platform for activism, we're going to go back to school and learn how to bake bread. Because if you're baking cakes, you're baking bread, you're baking pastries. Whether that's to build bridges between you and other vegans to collaborate, or it's a form of outreach to start the conversation with people who are not vegans, in so many different ways, I'm hoping that's going to be a more positive basis for my future engagement in vegan politics.